Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3844BN. Today's date is February 19th, 2026, and the title of the episode is Trump says we will find out in 10 days. Clock started. False flag to change narrative, or Iran. Hey, you know what's interesting? We've all seen the headlines about those miracle weight loss shots, but the 2026 data is officially in, and it's a wake-up call. A major analysis revealed that once people stop the injections, they regain an average of 60% of their weight within a year. Even worse, most of the gain is pure fat, but the muscle they lost stays gone, leaving them with a crashed metabolism and a body that's functionally older than when they started. That's why I'm obsessed with today's sponsor, GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of using needles to override my system, it uses clinically studied plant-based ingredients like metabolate to help my body naturally boost its own hunger control signals. I get the same fullness and fewer cravings, but without the scary side effects or the metabolic rebound. It supports my goals while protecting my muscles so I can actually keep the results for good. To celebrate Valentine's Day, get 50% off GLP-1 Elevate at trimwithx22.com. Every order includes a complete support bundle with a free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping on subscriptions. Head over to trimwithx22.com now to claim your 50% discount before it expires, or just click the link in the description. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, you can see something very interesting is happening right now. Since the Epstein files have come out, yes, we've seen people resign, but also you're starting to see people turn against them. And I think this is very, very important. For example, Bill Gates was supposed to be doing a speech, and they decided, you know what, we're not going to do it because he was in the Epstein files. So basically, I remember when there was a saying back in the Q Post where it says, these people will not be able to walk down the street because as more and more of these people are being brought out into the open, and I'm not just talking about the mass people that were in the files because a lot of these people had nothing to do with Epstein, but those people where you see a lot of the email exchanges, you could see that they're talking about pictures, they're talking about young girls, they're talking about money transfers, they're talking about all these different things. These individuals who used to walk around like they're kings or queens, they are going to have a major, major problem because now the public is going to see them in a different light. And this is what nobody's talking about right now. Yes, people say, oh, look, this person resigned. But they will not be able to go into establishments. They will not be able to give speeches. They will not be able to sit on boards. Because as the evidence continually comes out, and they see that, hey, wait, you were in line with this individual. You knew who he was, but you didn't stop. You kept doing it. Now, some of these people might be arrested because of the crimes that they have committed. But think of this on a much larger scale. And think about like Prince Andrew. He's been arrested. Do you think he has the ability to show his face? Or do you think that the crown right now is kind of looking the other way? Which means everyone else in the world is going to be looking the other way. So in the end, when you look at the Epstein information and you look at those individuals in this country that have committed treason against this country, that actually released COVID on this country to overthrow the United States government, to try to remove the duly elected president, do you think these people in the end will be able to walk down the street? Now, some of them will be arrested. We know that 100% will not, but it's going to be very, very difficult for these people to be on the board, get a job, do anything. Because people, they're going to know who they are. It's like a public shaming if you really think about it. And once again, you could see that everything is changing right now. Yes, the deep state, they're feeling pain every step of the way, and it's going to get worse and worse. Remember, this is just the beginning stages to get the people of this country, the people of the world to understand what has been happening for a very long time. Remember this, you have to remember, all of this stuff has been hidden from the masses. Now, you might know, you might have a friend that knows, you might have been going down the rabbit hole, but you have to remember the masses who have families that are working every day, that are busy every day, they're not sitting there looking at all this. They might hear about it. They might say, yeah, I heard something about that, but I don't believe it. These people, they're now starting to understand what has been going on in this country and around the world. And they're going to learn more as time goes on. That's what this is all about. And you can see by doing this, the deep state players are feeling pain every step of the way. And as Trump dismantles the deep state players across the globe, which he's already done in Venezuela, you see Colombia right now, that leader is trying to, get on Trump's good graces here. And you could see Cuba is having major problems, blackouts and other things. You could see out in Iran right now is in the crosshairs of the Trump administration. And Trump said something very interesting while he was giving a speech at the Board of Peace. And yes, there's a lot of investments coming into the Board of Peace because I do believe this Board of Peace is now going to compete with the deep state institution known as the UN. Remember, these institutions, these organizations that have been set up, they were set up for the deep state's new world. Trump now is removing this country from their institutions, from their organizations, because we're no longer part of their new world and their agenda. We have separated ourselves from all of this. And I think this is why Trump wants to repaint Air Force One and the entire fleet, because right now it's light blue. And there is another nation, there's another organization or institution that has that same color scheme. And it's very interesting that it was done back in the 60s, and Trump is about to change that. But Trump, he was talking at the Board of Peace, and he said something very interesting, that in 10 days, or approximately 10 days, we might find out something. Now, the clock has started, and this could either be a false flag, because he said something very interesting in his Truth Post, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. And we actually mentioned it yesterday about Diego Garcia and the UK. Or is he saying, well, the 10 days have nothing to do with Iran. We might see something happen, like a false flag, to change the narrative. And this might change what he's about to do, which is very interesting. And we'll have to see how that all plays out. We'll be talking about that in just a sec. But first, let's talk about what's happening out in D.C. and the Potomac River, because it looks like it's not a good situation. And you could see that these DEI people, they're not really interested in solving this problem. C3 put this out and said the Key Bridge has not been rebuilt. There's raw sewage flooding the Potomac River. Democrat Wes Moore signs emergency legislation to ban local authorities from aiding ICE and removing illegals from Maryland. Democrats are trying to destroy America. That's his biggest concern right now. Interfering with federal officers to remove the people that came into this country illegally. He's not very concerned about the Potomac River. He's not really concerned about rebuilding that bridge that they destroyed. The only thing on his mind is we need to keep the illegals in the state, or we won't be elected again, or installed, should we say. So once again, you could see where they're at. But it looks like D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, she is now requesting federal help. She is now going to Trump saying, we need help with this sewage crisis. And Trump said, listen, when you're ready, come to me. We will give you assistance. And it looks like she's doing just that. And this is what she put out. Mayor Bowser requests federal support as region continues to respond to the Potomac interceptor break. And this is what it says. This is the first paragraph. Today, as the region continues responding to the Potomac interceptor break, Mayor Muriel Bowser requests federal support through a presidential emergency disaster declaration request. In order to make the request, the mayor first declared a local public emergency. In addition to seeking 100% reimbursement for costs incurred by the district and the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority, DC Water, the mayor has requested federal support in the following areas. And she's calling on Trump to assist in all of this. And he said he will give assistance if you ask. And she has just asked. So this is very interesting. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that since Trump put his policies into place and has been calling out the universities, what have we seen so far? We've seen foreign enrollment at U.S. colleges, it has been declining right now. The Kubisi letter on X put this out, said, international student enrollment at U.S. universities declined minus 1.4% year on year this fall, the first decrease in 3 years. Approximately 5,000 fewer international students enrolled nationwide. The decline was led by graduate enrollment programs that plunged by 6%, or by 10,000 students, the most in at least 5 years. This follows an increase of 50% between 2020 and 2024. Public four-year institutions were hit hardest, recording a 9% drop in graduate international students. Foreign student inflow is slowing down right now. So basically, Trump has reversed everything, and the universities, they're seeing the results of all of this, which means it's going to open up more seats for what? For the people of this country, the American people, to go to these schools. Because, again, the foreign students, what were they doing? They were taking the seats of American students. So everything is changing right now, which is very, very interesting. And we can see that Trump, he's continually pushing the deportation. That has not stopped. That is happening all across this country. He's getting rid of the worst of the worst. And Bill Malookin put out a very interesting story about an illegal. And he says, this is a wild one. DHS announces the ICE arrest of Liberian illegal alien who they say was working as a Minnesota corrections officer while also being AWOL from the PA National Guard, all while masquerading as a U.S. citizen despite having no legal status in the U.S. DHS says 45-year-old Morris Brown was identified as part of the major operation into Minnesota investigating aliens involved in fraud. He's also alleged to have committed marriage fraud and made repeated false claims to U.S. immigration authorities. So that's interesting. And think about it. He committed marriage fraud. You know he's voting in the elections. And think about why the D's continually push the idea that, oh, wait, the birth certificate name is going to be different than your married name, and this is going to cause a major problem. And this is why they're continually pushing this narrative out there, because I do believe this has to do with real ID. And we'll be talking about that in just a sec, because something very interesting came up with real ID that was passed, not this year, but in 2005. Think about that for a second. They were already planning this out for a very long time. And this is why they left this little loophole in the real ID. We'll be talking about that in just a sec. But the other thing that's very interesting is we could see as the Epstein information continually comes out, we're seeing that these very big names, they have been in contact with Epstein. They've been involved with Epstein. They have pictures of young girls and other things. And basically, these individuals are feeling the pain every step of the way because, again, as this information comes out, they're going to have to give up their spots, not just resign from whatever job they have, but they won't be able to be on a board. They won't be able to get a job. They won't be able to walk down the street. They won't be able to give talks. They won't be able to do any of these things. And when you look at all these individuals like Prince Andrew, when you look at Bill Gates, when you look at Reid Hoffman, when you look at all these individuals, you could see every step of the way, they're definitely feeling the pain. Actually, right now, Bill Gates was supposed to give a speech and about AI, and he canceled it because of the Epstein files. So these people are having a very difficult time right now. And you could see that the D's, they continually put out lie after lie after lie. Brian Allen put this out and said, Ted Lieu says the full unreleased Epstein files show Donald Trump raping children. That's what's being hidden. That's why the files stay sealed. That's why there are no arrests. Well, DOJ rapid response says, first, these salaciously insane accusations are in the library, unredacted. Second, they were found to have zero credibility. Ted Lieu is a disgrace who pushes baseless accusations to further his political ambition. Do better, Ted. And this is absolutely true. He's lying about all of this. And again, they're trying to bring this up that Trump is holding all of this back. Now, think about it. Yes, they were instructed to release this information. The information is being released. They just dumped this information with everyone's name in it. And now certain people are feeling the pain from this because they never expected their names to be in there, even though they really had nothing to do with anything. So was this a very good approach? Most likely not. Now, there might be other information that is not being released because of why? Because it's being used for an investigation. Why would you release information that maybe the grand jury has or the FBI has to the public right now? Because wouldn't that disrupt the investigation or what the grand jury is looking at? Think about when Trump and the DOJ said, listen, we would like the grand jury information about Epstein. You know what they said? Absolutely not. Why did they say that in the very beginning? Think about it. And by the way, that information was already used to convict Epstein. But why didn't they want to release it? So most likely there's investigations going on right now. But you could see that more and more of these individuals, these high-profile individuals that have been trying to stop Trump for a very long time, since he came down the escalator, their names are being brought up over and over and over and over. Representative Anna Paulina Luna put this out and said, Susan Hamlin sent this email. She took a plea deal and was given victim status under the previous DOJ. Interesting. DOJ should look into charges. Possible human rights violation were committed by Susan. I say that based on other files with her name on it. These women don't get to hide behind redactions. There were so many victims, none of which did what Susan did. This needs to be reopened. Now, remember, the victims who were brought in as young girls, they were then, as once they reach age 18, they were then used to recruit other victims, which means they're co-conspirators, which means, again, they're not just victims. They did this on somebody else. Kaneko the Great says, Jeffrey Epstein's most obvious co-conspirators were always the women in his inner circle who enabled his abuse by recruiting, scheduling, and paying underage girls to give him sexualized massages. Some of these women may have initially been victims themselves, but once they became adults and were paid to help recruit and manage other underage girls, they became co-conspirators. This is how it works. So once again, a lot of these victims that are out there, yes, these are terrible things that happened to them, but they became co-conspirators later on. And maybe this is why some of these names have been redacted. Is it really protecting them or is it hiding them? Because think about when the deep state players put out certain documents and they hid Virginia Giuffre's name. Why would they do that? So once again, we have to think through all of this. But more and more information is coming out, and this really explains why these people always go after Trump. Hans put this out and said, wow, this is a who boy. It may be the clearest documented example we have of Jeffrey Epstein directly exerting leverage over elites through sexual entanglements. What appears to be happening here is that Joshua Fink, the son of Larry Fink of BlackRock, was involved with a woman who had been brought into the United States by a modeling agency controlled by Epstein associate Jean-Luc Brunel when Joshua Fink raised concerns about an invoice presumably related to arranging the woman's continued stay in the U.S., or possibly something more compromising. Brunel's immediate response was to forward the matter directly to Epstein. The attached note also states that the woman was sending her private conversations with Joshua Fink straight to Epstein himself. Technofog then put this out. According to a DOJ prosecutor memo from 2016, Jean-Luc Brunel possessed photos of Epstein with potentially young girls. Brunel was concerned with criminal exposure. A friend advised him to delete the pics. He refused to share the photos with attorneys for the victims. What happened to Brunel? I think we all know. Mariana Fels then says, Jean-Luc Epstein's top model recruiter, was secretly negotiating with prosecutors in 2016 to testify against Epstein in exchange for immunity. He had photographic evidence and was naming names. Federal prosecutors notes one of Epstein's BFS, Jean-Luc Brunel, has helped get girls. He's wanting to cooperate. Then Epstein found out. He mailed an attorney, Kathy Rumler, who was basically mentioned in the Epstein files, who was also the counsel to Obama for Russia collusion, saying Brunel was headed to the U.S. Attorney's Office and that someone had asked for $3 million so that Jean-Luc would not go in. Rumler was on the phone with Epstein's lawyer by the next morning. Brunel went dark. Epstein stayed free for 3 more years. Attorney David Boies says the collapse set us back a couple of years. We know from our lawsuits that there were more than 50 girls that were trafficked after this. Epstein was found dead in a cell in 2019. Brunel was caught at a Paris airport in 2020 trying to flee to Senegal. In February 2022, he was found hanged in a cell the same way. 2 men at the center of the same trafficking ring, both about to face justice, both dead by hanging in their cells. Paris prosecutors announced Saturday they're reopening the case. Isn't that interesting? And then what do we know so far? Well, all this is connected, and there's one name that hasn't been mentioned. That is Rachel Chandler. Karma Patriot says conspiracy theorists were right again. Next up, Rachel Chandler. Because again, think about it. They were recruiting all these young girls from modeling agencies. Rachel Chandler fits into all of this. And who was involved with Rachel Chandler? Oh, that's right, Prince Andrew. And Prince Andrew was just arrested. There were 6 unmarked police cars with plainclothes officers. They arrived at Prince Andrew's home on his 66th birthday. 666? Maybe it's just a coincidence. But once again, he was involved with Rachel Chandler. Actually, there's pictures of him with Rachel Chandler. So I do believe that information is going to be coming out very, very soon. And you have to remember, these individuals, they are now scarred for life. Yes, there might be criminal investigations. They might be arrested later. Maybe some of these people will never be arrested. We have to think this way because, again, maybe there's not enough evidence to convict them. But since they were involved, since they were communicated with Epstein, since there were certain things said in emails, this is going to make it very, very difficult for them every single day. So a lot of these people are going to feel the pain. Even those people that were just mentioned. I mean, look at Whoopi Goldberg. She has to defend herself right now. She has to explain why her name was brought up in these files. Bill Gates can't even give talks right now. So once again, we could see that they are definitely feeling the pain. And the other thing that's very interesting is that we know that the EU, they are now censoring their people. Yes, they talk about how they love freedom of speech as long as they can control the freedom of speech, which is not freedom of speech. That's censorship. This is what they used going back before our founding fathers. You could say anything you want except for this stuff. So we're giving you the right to speak freely except for everything over here. And if you mention any of these things over here, we're going to arrest you. We're going to fine you. But you have free speech. That's what they're saying. And what's very interesting, and Eric Doherty put this out, is that Trump and Marco Rubio's State Department is creating a portal for people in places like the European Union to bypass censorship laws with the help of Elon Musk's Doge genius, big balls, Edward Korestein. So this is going to be very, very interesting because once again, they have hate speech laws. They're censoring people. They're going to give them the ability to get around this. Because again, we have to remember the EU, they're all for free speech, aren't they? Unless it's the things they don't like. And that's what was happening in this country. We had the Biden administration dictating to Twitter, dictating to Facebook, dictating to Instagram, dictating to YouTube on what people could say. So basically, this is a violation of everyone's constitutional rights because now you have the government telling the social media platforms, please censor this person. Please shadow ban that person. And you could see the EU, the deep state players, they want that to be here in this country. And once again, they have a major problem. It's that pesky thing called the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. And this is why they've been trying to get rid of it for a very long time. And they failed every single time. And they'll continue to fail. Trump pretty much shut it all down. And you could see out in Canada, they're having a very difficult time. It looks like the people of Canada do not want to fight in a war to protect those individuals that are installed in Canada that are destroying their lives. MJ Truth Ultra put this out and said, the Canadian federal government decided to flush out their local talent and just announced new expressed entry for immigrant categories of skilled military recruits into the Canadian Armed Forces. Yeah, you read that right. They want foreign national soldiers to join their ranks. Isn't that interesting? Wall Street Maverick says Canadians won't fight for their country, so now Canada will invite soldiers from the Chinese military to join. I can just imagine that the Chinese military will send people with fake names and backgrounds to infiltrate the Canadian military and NATO. Absolutely. This is going to be a disaster in Canada. You're actually watching Canada implode right now. And Trump, he pretty much set all this up. Because if you really think about it, if you look at the USMCA, Trump wants to get rid of it. Actually, he wanted to get rid of NAFTA. He was only able to restructure it because of all the ins and outs and things that they put into it. He couldn't get rid of it, so he had to restructure it into the USMCA. And then he put certain things in there that will allow him to exit. One of them would be like, hey, Canada, if you decide to do business with China and you import the products from China, you violated the USMCA. So President Trump has the right to cancel it. He pretty much set Canada up by just placing tariffs on them and making them feel the pain. So every step of the way, as they move closer and closer to China, did you know last month half the country got hit by one of the worst winter storms in decades, and thousands of people lost power, some for just a few hours, some for a lot longer? Blackouts are becoming the new normal, and even when the power is working, it's more expensive than ever, which is why so many Americans are looking into off-grid backup power systems. It's one of the smartest moves you can make because it protects you from severe weather and skyrocketing electricity prices. I recommend the Grid Doctor 3300 solar generator from our friends at My Patriot Supply, because unlike gas generators, it's silent, safe to use indoors, and it's completely off-grid. And if you go to preparewithx22.com today, when you order a Grid Doctor generator, you'll get over $800 in free preparedness gifts, including a 4-week survival food kit, water filtration, a cook stove, and more. They're calling it the Mount Rushmore of preparedness, and the free gifts won't be around for long. So go to preparewithx22.com right away. That's preparewithx22.com, or just click the link in the description. The entire country is going to implode, and you're watching it firsthand. But you could see the EU, they're trying everything, and the deep state players, of course, they're trying everything they possibly can to destroy Hungary. And they're trying to get Viktor Orban out of his position. The Islander put this out and said, Brussels just made a catastrophic mistake. A Berlin court ordered X to hand over Hungarian election data to researchers Germany funds weeks before the vote. They're trying to set up another Romania. If they try to soft coup Hungary's elections and fail, every populace in Europe learns Brussels is even weaker than it looks. The EU collapse either way. And this is absolutely true. And they're not going to succeed. Viktor Orban knows exactly what they're planning to do. This is why they're putting so much pressure on Hungary right now. And once again, I think in the end, when the EU tries to do this, the other nations in the EU, they're going to say enough is enough. Now, of course, you're going to have Germany, you're going to have France, you're going to have Spain, and the other countries all say, oh, no, we're still with the EU, because you have to remember those people are installed. But you could see the deep state players, they're definitely at war, not with just Russia, but with MAGA. Marian Afal put this out and said, Germany's Merce says war has returned to Europe. We see that the American government is serious about MAGA. We see China encircling Taiwan. He seriously listed MAGA alongside Russian aggression and Chinese expansionism. I mean, really think about this. So basically, they're telling you the truth right now. Are they worried about China? No, not really. Are they really worried about Russia? No, they just made Russia the boogeyman. What are they really worried about? They're saying the quiet part out loud. They're worried about MAGA. They're worried about President Trump. They're worried about the direction the United States is heading. It's moving away from everything that they've put together, and they can't stop it. And what's very interesting is that North Korea, Kim Jong-un, he unveiled a nuclear-capable rocket system, and it has the ability to fly 400 kilometers, which covers all of South Korea. And I notice they keep putting these articles out that, oh, they have these rockets. Oh, they can carry nuclear payloads. Because you have to remember, going back to 2016 when Trump won the election and Trump came into the White House in 2017, basically they were going to use North Korea to start World War III. And again, if they can't use Russia, they might try to use North Korea. But I do believe Trump has a special relationship with Kim Jong-un. And again, if you don't have the nations on the side of reacting to a false flag, I don't think it's going to happen. But it looks like the deep state players, they're trying to delay peace every chance they get. And every step of the way, you can see Trump's team is continually trying to chip away at the delay and trying to push them into different corners. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says, today, at President Trump's direction, the United States moderated a third set of trilateral discussions with Ukraine and Russia. Thank you to the Swiss Confederation for being gracious hosts for today's meeting. President Trump's success in bringing both sides of this war together has brought about meaningful progress, and we are proud to work under his leadership to stop the killing in this terrible conflict. Both parties agreed to update their respective leaders and continue working towards a deal. Has a deal been made? Nope, not as of yet. And you can see Ukraine right now is continually pushing back, blaming it on Russia, saying that Russia is not working with them. But again, you could see this is what they've been trying to do. Iran is doing the same exact thing. I think it's the same exact tactic. But what's very interesting is that the Polish government, they have asked its citizens in Iran to leave immediately. And like we said from the very, very beginning, Trump, he was giving a speech at the Board of Peace, and he said the following. He says, so now, and he was talking about Iran, so now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probable 10 days. So it's very interesting that he said 10 days because, again, we know there's a lot of posts with 10 days. And he didn't say 7, he didn't say 8, he didn't say 9, he said 10 days. And this is very, very interesting. So let's go back to post 370. It says clock started 10 days. So it looks like the clock has started. Then we have post 2726, this is February 15th, which is very interesting, very close to a delta. It says, be alert, next 10 days. False flag attempts may be carried out in attempt to change narrative, negative optics. High possibility of multiple day coverage event forcing pause on news. See something, say something. Now, is this about a false flag that's separate and apart from what's happening in Iran? Maybe. Or is it something that's going to be associated with Iran? But if we go back to Trump's post yesterday about Diego Garcia, and remember Diego Garcia is about 2,300 miles away from Iran. It's a strategic location where they can fly weapons and shoot missiles into Iran, and Iran cannot reach that base. And we could see that the UK wanted to lease this out and basically tried to remove the United States from this area. Now, I do believe this was being done on purpose because, again, they're protecting their deep state layer, just like they protect Ukraine. They were trying to protect Venezuela, but that failed. But Trump, in this post, said something very interesting, and it's highlighted. Should Iran decide not to make a deal, it may be necessary for the United States to use Diego Garcia and the airfield located in Fairford in order to eradicate a potential attack by a highly unstable and dangerous regime. An attack that would potentially be made on the United Kingdom, as well as other friendly countries. So is something going to happen, maybe a missile or some other terrorist attack in the United Kingdom or some other friendly country to try to push a major war with Iran? Remember, the deep state players, their plan is to start a war. Are they going to use some type of scare event to start a war with Iran? Is this what Trump is talking about? Maybe, maybe not. But again, is Trump going to have World War III? Well, isn't this what everyone thought in Venezuela? Didn't we have the Armada sitting outside of Venezuela and everyone thought, well, troops on the ground, we're going in, World War III. Remember when Trump brought the forces to Iran and just bombed the nuclear facility? Do we have World War III? So do you really think troops are going to be on the ground? Or are the people of Iran waiting for a signal And will there be other bombings? And will this allow the people of Iran to move and remove those individuals that have been controlling that country? Think about that for a second, because I do believe the people of Iran are waiting for a specific signal. And when they see maybe bombs falling on certain deep state areas, will this give the power to the people to overthrow the government in Iran? Let's see how this all plays out, because again, think about how this is playing out. Trump wants the people to override the deep state government in Iran. The deep state players want World War III. So is Trump letting us know they're going to try to use a false flag to bring us to war with Iran and get the other nations like the UK or any other European nation to say, this is war, we're going in. And maybe this is why he's saying 10 days, let's see how this plays out, because it looks like the deep state players are about to do something. Very, very interesting. But you can see that the U.S. right now, the administration, he is now withdrawing all forces from Syria. So everything the deep state players tried to do has completely failed. There's now peace in Syria. The deep state players do not control it. And the troops are being removed. Actually, the deep state players, they didn't want to remove the troops in Syria. Actually, they wanted the troops to stay there, just like Iraq, just like Libya, just like all the other nations that were overthrown. And you can see this is not happening the same way. Now, like we said before, I do believe the deep state players, as we get closer to the midterms, they will try to use some type of an event. Now, some people say it might be another pandemic. Well, it's going to be a little bit tough to do this because, again, the United States does not follow the World Health Organization. We removed ourselves from the World Health Organization. The deep state players are not in control of HHS. They're not in control of the FDA. They're not in control of the CDC now because Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, he is now going to be the acting CDC director, which is absolutely a good thing. And he's an acting CDC director, which he doesn't let to be confirmed, which is very, very interesting because he's there until Trump names a permanent director. So if they're going to try to use a pandemic, it's going to be very, very difficult because they don't have the cooperation that they had before. They don't control the CDC, HHS. They don't control the World Health Organization where they can dictate what we have to do here. All of this has been removed. So what's their alternative? Most likely a cyber attack or maybe something else. But I'm leaning to a cyber attack because, once again, we were told about this and it's invisible. And you can convince people that something's happening when it really isn't. So let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see is that all eyes are on Minnesota. And what's very interesting, and Paul Sperry put this out, the D.C.-based watchdog group, National Legal and Policy Center, has filed a complaint with the Congressional Ethics Office against Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar over her allegedly advising illegal Somali immigrants to lie to ICE agents if they are stopped for questioning. And all those different individuals who were laundering the money, those Somalis, a lot of them have been arrested, about 79 of them. And the latest one was trying to escape to the UK. Fahima Mahmood. She is the 79th defendant charged in the sprawling Feeding Our Future fraud network, the same racket that stole hundreds of millions meant for kids' meals and actual care. So the owner of Future Leaders Early Learning Center, who pocketed a staggering $3.67 million in child care funds in 2025 alone, has been arrested before she could escape to the UK. So yes, all of these individuals have been arrested, and there might be more to come. Now remember, they're just the front men and women. And you have to remember, they're the ones who did not orchestrate all this. They're the ones who carried out the orders. And this is why the FBI, the DOJ, this is why they're following the money to find out who's really orchestrating all of this. Yes, we know it's Waltz. Yes, we know most likely the mayor of Minneapolis is involved, but who's above them? And this is what we're going to find out. We're going to find out who the puppet masters are. But you can see, as we approach the election right now, we can see that everything is changing. And you can see that it looks like the D's got their marching orders, and now they're shifting everything that they do. If you notice that Hillary Clinton says, "Oh, illegal immigration is not what we thought it was going to be, and we should really take another look at this." This is because they're now gearing up for the midterms. And once again, you could see there's a major shift happening. C3 put this out and said, in the past 48 hours, prominent Dems and the media have pushed the narrative that no one has called POTUS Trump racist, and they haven't referred to him as Hitler. Orders have gone out. They looked at the internal polling, and they're seeing the writing on the wall. And again, they lied about this because they all called him a racist. They all called him Hitler. Take a listen.
A thin-skinned racist bully.
He has been racist.
There has never been a president in American history who's been as so openly racist.
A racist in chief.
The president oftentimes resorts to very bigoted, xenophobic, Islamophobic, racist rhetoric.
And once again, you can see that the people are not going to forget any of this. They know exactly what they've been doing. And again, they don't control the narrative. Yes, the fake news might be, and all the different pundits, they might be saying, "Oh, no, it's a lie." But again, we have social media today. And this bypasses everything that they're trying to do. So this is not going to work. And you have to remember, even Trump looks at the internal polls. And this is why people get confused. When Trump looks at the internal polls, he might see, something different. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she wanted to run for the Senate. He looked at the internal polls. Listen, even if I endorse you, you're not going to win. So it's not going to work. I've done this before. I know what's going on. Stay where you are. People get angry. It looks like he's not endorsing Nancy Mace right now because he probably looked at the internal polls and said, listen, even if I endorse you, you're not going to win. Sometimes he might put someone in there that people hate. Like, oh, it's a rhino. Why did he pick him? Because he looked around and said, okay, there's no other person. Poll numbers are terrible. This is the only person that has the poll numbers. If I endorse this person, they'll keep the seat. I'd rather keep the rhino seat than give it away to a Democrat. Because if you have the majority of the Republicans there, they can control that one rhino or two rhinos or three rhinos. I do believe that's the way he's thinking. And this is why sometimes it doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense if you really think about it. Because remember, this is about taking back the country. This is not about appeasing one person or two people. This is about looking at it strategically and saying, listen, if I have the majority and I have three rhinos in there, guess what? I can get things done. Instead of giving all the seats away to the Democrats. Because you lose those votes right off the bat, don't you? So I do believe this is the strategy that he's been using. And the other thing that we could see is that there's a massive amount of fraud in California. And we're seeing another part of the fraud. Brendan Carr put this out and said, either California has a massive and previously unreported zombie problem, or Governor Newsom spent millions of dollars to provide phone and internet service to dead people. Not good. The FCC is ending the California fraud. And that's exactly what is happening right now. And the other thing that's really interesting, since we're talking about fraud and talking about all these different states that are harboring illegals, we know in the end, they're going to be releasing Antifa onto the streets, and they're going to hope that the illegals and the criminals join in to Antifa, which they will because they have no morals and they're criminals. And what's very interesting, we mentioned this a couple days ago, is that Texas, they're having their first federal trial against Antifa members. And it looks like they just went ahead and they pushed a lawfare tactic. And Amuse explains, the Antifa lawyer representing the terrorist who attacked and shot ICE agents in Texas engineered a mistrial by wearing an anti-ICE t-shirt in front of jurors. He didn't like the jury that was selected. Very interesting. You see, this is what happens when you're in a state that you don't control. You get a jury that is going to rule against you because these people are thinking logically, they're using common sense, and they realize, hey, these people have committed crimes against federal officers. So basically, he used a tactic to get a mistrial. And this is what we're dealing with. Now, the other thing, like we said in the very, very beginning, I think it's becoming much, much clearer why the D's decided to go after women with marriage certificates. And I find it very interesting because, again, they're allowing men onto women's sports, allowing men into women's bathrooms. But now they're saying, oh, women's rights. I mean, this is ridiculous. I do believe most likely we found the real reason why they decided to bring this up. Paul Sperry put this out and said, did you know that even though the point of the Real ID is to prevent identity fraud and increase security, non-citizens get to jump through fewer hoops to obtain one than you? That's right. Docs required for American women, certified marriage license, plus birth certificate, are waived for female immigrants. All they need to present to DMV is a work permit or a green card. No social security card either. So let's just put this into perspective. The D's don't like the SAVE Act because it's going to push everyone to present ID. They have to show marriage certificate, birth certificate. Now, they handed out real IDs in these sanctuary places to illegals. They didn't have to show any of this. They had to show a green card or what other work permit that they had. No other identification. Americans have to show full identifications. So now, these people with real ID have to show the actual documentation, or they can't vote. Everyone see where this is going? Do you understand why the D's went all out and pushed this? Because they're not talking about the everyday American. They're talking about the illegals who got real ID by using none of the documents that you use. And this law was passed in 2005. Now, can the Department of Homeland Security change this? Absolutely. They can modify the regulations, and they can require non-citizens to provide additional documentation. And I think this is something that Kristi Noem needs to do right now, because this is what I do believe the D's have been arguing about. It's not, remember, they lost their people. The American people have no problem looking for their marriage certificate, looking for their birth certificate. They can order it very easily. And we explained this yesterday. I think they're talking about these people with the real ID. This is the loophole that they created back in 2005. So was this planned? Oh, yeah, it always has been. And you can see now we understand why they are doing this. Very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that we can see the deep state players, they're using the silent filibuster to try to stop the SAVE Act. And what's very interesting is that Arthur McWhorter says the longest talking filibuster ever was in 1964, when Democrat senators spoke for 60 days continuously to block the passage of the Civil Rights Act. Debate was forced. It lasted 60 days. The bill was passed. Now, isn't that interesting? The Democrats didn't want the Civil Rights Act passed. They don't want the SAVE Act passed. So now they're using like the silent filibuster. So basically, it's that party that is the problem. I think we all know this. I think we all know what they're doing here. And once again, they're always against the people. And it's clear as day right now. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, I only want Americans to vote in American elections. And he's absolutely right. There only should be Americans voting in American elections. And I do believe Kristi Noem, DHS, should be looking at the real ID right now. And I think these regulations need to be changed right now. And all those people that are illegal who got the real ID, that has to be checked to see should they have a real ID at this point. And once again, they were planning on all of this going way, way back. But again, she can change this. And this is what the SAVE Act does. And this is, now you know why the D's are so pissed off and angry about this. And they started up the entire narrative of marriage certificate and showing actual birth certificate and ID, because the illegals don't have it. You see where this is all going? Now, the other thing we could see is, since Trump is dismantling the deep state system, removing us from the deep state world, you know, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the UN, and the rest, you could see that Trump now wants to change the colors of the plane. Now, these colors were done back in JFK's time, and it's light blue, which I never knew it was light blue. I mean, it's America. It should be red, white, and blue. But if you look at it, and Ripcord says, look, For those who don't understand why Trump is changing the color scheme of Air Force One and the entire fleet, by the way, United Nations is light blue. So basically, I think what happened back then, they said, okay, the U.S. is part of this. The U.S. is controlled now by the deep state players, and we're bringing the entire world into our one world government. Trump now is changing the color scheme of the plane, and he's going to make it red, white, and blue to say, no, the U.S. is not part of this. And he's changing the colors completely. And I think they should have been this way from the very, very beginning, because our colors are red, white, and blue. Why would we have white and light blue like the UN? It makes no sense whatsoever. But I think he's sending a very, very clear message to the deep state players. And now everything is going to change. And it's continually changing. Why? Because the Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.